Baltimore went to 2023 seeking a proper return to the playoffs after the last two seasons for them featured their starter, Lamar Jackson, being injured late in the year. And for at least last year, they didn't have Lamar Jackson in their first round appearance against the Cincinnati Bengals, and they were disposed of in the playoffs. So to get to that point of making the playoffs with Lamar Jackson, they actually had to address an important decision with them. What do you do with them? Because Lamar Jackson was a free agent last offseason, but the team franchise tagged him initially. And Lamar Jackson was not happy about that. He was not happy that, the team didn't really value me as a long-term option, as a franchise guy. So he requested a trade not long after. But the team and Lamar came together and signed a long-term deal just before the NFL draft. And it was a big, fat contract. Yes, big money, pal. So now it was time for the former MVP to prove whether or not he was worthy of such contract. After 2 down seasons, trying to deal with injury and, just not really living up to that play that he had in 2019, where he was the former league MVP. And boy, did Lamar Jackson really prove it to us. He really had a MVP-like year, and he actually did have an MVP year. Because Lamar Jackson was on a mission like a super technician in 2023, having near perfect passing games almost every week, and finally possessing that balance of being a rushing and a pocket passing quarterback that I want to see before the season started. Because we've seen a lot of Lamar rushing, but we haven't seen enough of him actually being a true passing quarterback, and he really did it a lot this past season. And aiding him and such were new additions to the receiving game, Nelson Aguilar and Odell Beckham Jr., as well as they drafted rookie Zay Flowers in the receiving game. So they got him some help around tight end Mark Andrews and their third-year receiver Rashad Bateman. So they had a stacked receiving core, and so finally some weapons around Lamar Jackson. And in balancing out the passing game was a strong backfield despite the injuries again. Was Gus Edwards, Gus the Bus, Justice Hill, and the breakout rookie Keen Mitchell. And then also helping out the Ravens offense was a very physical, league-leading defense. The Ravens were and played like a top 5 defense in the NFL right from the jump. You had a very physical front seven that included the likes of edge rusher Justin Madubike, edge rusher Jadeveon Clowney, linebackers Patrick Queen and Roquan Smith. All of them were able to get to the quarterback in a hurry, hit him hard, force turnovers, you name it. This group was physical. Like, they were hard. They were aggressive. They want to kick your ass if you were a quarterback. Meanwhile, in the back end of the line, they were not as physical, but they knew how to create some turnovers on you. Like safety Kyle Hamilton, he ran run shot in the back line, like scrambling all over the field, and then Marlon Humphrey at corner, once he made his return from some injuries, that back line made it difficult for defenses to throw at them. So, look at what else went right for this team. Well, despite all injury mania, once again running wild in Baltimore, pal, they managed to overcome it. They actually managed to swing by it this time around. And they used their strengths to put those injuries to bed. Put together their best season for the first time since 2019, finishing 14-3 with the top seed. 13-4 with the top seed in the AFC since that same year in 2019. Now, unfortunately for the Baltimore Ravens, that's where things pretty much end. That's where things pretty much end for them because, sure, you win the divisional game against the Houston Texans, but pretty much all those positives that I just talked about for them, those were pretty much wiped away in the AFC Championship game at home against the Kansas City Chiefs. So a home favorite in Lamar Jackson, the Ravens, and all those things that I just praised you for, yeah, it was pretty much nowhere to be found against Mahomes and the Chiefs. The Lamar Jackson that was in the regular season, that was also present in the divisional game against Houston, he couldn't crack the code that was the Chiefs' defense, and he made 3 crushing turnovers in that game. And especially towards the end, when he was trying to score, he threw it dead in the right of 3 defenders. And meanwhile, you have the Ravens defense that had been very physical, that had been playing very well all year. He struggled to minimize Patrick Mahomes in the short passing game. They barely got to him. I think he only got sacked once in that game, if not at all. And in short, despite keeping it close all game, it was a very low-scoring game. The Ravens just simply missed their opportunities to take control of that game, and they just fell one game short of their first Super Bowl since 2013. So for the Ravens, sure, it's good that Lamar Jackson had a bounce-back year, and he won the MVP to boot, but in my opinion, none of that matters if we don't get to the final duet in the Super Bowl, and Lamar Jackson cracked again when it mattered most. Actually, the whole team cracked when it matters most. When you're pretty much shutting people up, you were having this very good year for Lamar, and you're having a very physical defense, and yet you couldn't do anything with it when the lights were shining brightest on you in the AFC title game with one game between you and the Super Bowl. So Baltimore does have a chance to make it back there and rewrite history, but once the offseason began, this team was going to look a little bit different. So looking at this offseason for the Baltimore Ravens, they had around $16 million in cap space. They do have the 30th overall pick in this upcoming draft, but they did have a lot of free agents. And they surely weren't going to keep them all. Like backup Tyler Huntley, who had been playing in place of Lamar Jackson for the last 2 seasons. Fortunately, in the case that Lamar does get hurt again, he's not going to be around for that because he signed with the Cleveland Browns. And looking at running backs, Dalvin Cook, J.K. Dobbins, and Gus Edwards, they were all free agents. Gus Edwards did sign with the Chargers. Receivers, Odell Beckham Jr. and Devin Duvernay signed with the Jaguars. Guard Kevin Zeitler, one of Jackson's key guards, signed with the Lions. Jadeveon Clowney also signed somewhere. I think it was Panthers. He signed with the Panthers recently. Linebacker Patrick Queen, he went to the division rival, Steelers. Ooh, man, that's a major loss for that defense. And then safety Geno Stun also went to the Jaguars. So some of those key pieces on that defense and that offense, gone. Divino. And the Ravens, because they don't have really much money to spend, they were not able to replace them right away. So they did make a few moves though. One of those moves they had to address right away because, well, their defensive coordinator in making that physical defense, Mike McDonald, he left to take the Seahawks head coaching position. So they replaced him with an internal promotion to inside linebackers coach Zach Orr. How Orr manages to put that defense together, how he does as a play caller, it'll be interesting to see. They did make a trade. Then that was trading away Morgan Moses, the guard, to the New York Jets in return for a 4th-round pick swap and a 6th-round pick in this year's draft. And they did make an interesting signing. They signed Derrick Henry from the Tennessee Titans, hopefully to bolster up that backfield, maybe to help out Keenan Mitchell. So we'll see. And then they did re-sign edge rusher Justin Mudubike to a big fat contract. So other than Derrick Henry, I mean, they didn't really re-sign. They didn't really sign anybody to bolster out some of their key free agent departures. So looking at some of their needs that they need to address this offseason, well, is that defense. They got to retool that defense. So they need to address the replacement of Patrick Queen, first of all, because a key part of that front seven is gone. So they also have to address the passing defense that hurt them in the AFC title game against the Chiefs. So Zach Orr is going to have a big a big task at hand the rest of this offseason in retooling this defense. And that starts with the NFL draft. What do you address first? Replacing Patrick Queen, retooling that defensive line, the secondary. Options need to be had here. And you also have to consider retooling the offensive line because the Ravens did have a good offensive line, good pass protection for Lamar, but they lost 2 of their starting guards in free agency. So they got to find some replacements for them. So when you look at the Baltimore Ravens, they had a really good regular season. And he looked like the late season Super Bowl favorites before the playoffs began. Hell, I even picked them to go to the Super Bowl as well. They were well balanced, and Lamar Jackson had the best season in 4 years. Unfortunately, it didn't translate to their biggest game before the Super Bowl. So the Ravens got to regroup and try again next fall, but they got to fill in those blanks first on some key losses in order to do so. If not, then it can be a struggle to replicate the success that they had this year.